Hi there, Frontline Church family and friends. Today's Moravian text, we are in Acts, we are in chapter 16, verse 30, through to chapter 17, verse 3. It's the second part of a story that started in yesterday's reading, where Paul and Silas were preaching. They cast a demon out of a woman, a slave girl who'd been used to tell fortunes and generate income. So the owners of this slave girl, they took Paul and Silas to the magistrate's court, and they had Paul and Silas stripped, beaten, thrown into prison. And that's the part of the story we were reading about yesterday. And of course, in yesterday's reading, well, there was this glorious breakthrough moment. Paul and Silas at midnight praying, singing their hymns of worship to Jesus, praising God, and the whole prison was shook. The doors flung open, the chains fell off everyone, and they were miraculously set free. And I was really taken in today's reading by the bit where it said that the magistrates, unaware of this, they sent word to have Paul and Silas freed the very next morning. I mean, it seems like they'd only intended to have them in prison for one day. So why the miraculous intervention? If they'd been set free the following day anyway, God would have known that. So why does God choose to free them several hours earlier in such a dramatic way? And of course, we know the answer to that. It's simple. It's a witness to the jailer and the fellow prisoners. It was so that the jailer and his family would be brought into God's family. And I think that's got to be so much the main focus for us in the miraculous, wanting to see more of the supernatural. We align ourselves for far more miracles, far more of the supernatural when we take risks outside of church services, outside of the safety of Christians. God loves to step in and do what only he can do. Now, yesterday we were left with this cliffhanger. The jailer says to Paul and Silas, "What must I do to be saved? What must I do?" It's a religious mindset. Religion is all about what people need to do to earn salvation. It's about their works, their behaviour. All religion offers its own answer to that, its set of rules, whether that be the 613 laws of Judaism, the 5 pillars of Islam, the 8-fold path of Buddhism. It's about what we must and mustn't do. But Paul responds to the jailer with these words: what you must do is believe. And this is the unique beauty of the gospel. Salvation by faith, by believing because of God's grace, his free gift to us. Now, I said before that the magistrates passed a message on for Paul and Silas to be let out of prison. But it's interesting that Paul refuses. He forces the issue. He says, well, if they want us to leave, they will have to come here personally and escort us out of the prison. Now, why did Paul take that approach? Well, for a couple of reasons, I think. Firstly, I think it was a justice issue. Being a Christian isn't about demanding your rights, but neither is it about being a pushover. And there are times when I think God calls us, often at personal risk and inconvenience, to make a stand, to force an issue, so that in doing so, we contribute to creating a fairer society for others. Paul was willing to stay in that prison to expose the injustice. Secondly, I think Paul's just buying some time so he can teach and disciple these new believers in what was a new church community. So he was willing to hang around, again at personal risk and cost and inconvenience, to prioritize discipleship for these people. And I've talked recently about the roller coaster of Acts, the ups and the downs, the battles and the breakthroughs, the power and the persecution. And we see it in today's passage, don't we? It ends with another group of new believers being established. It would seem that nothing and no one can hinder the kingdom advancing. But of course, in the proclaiming of that message, isn't it interesting that Paul talks about the suffering of the Messiah? And ultimately, what we've just read about Paul and Silas, that was Jesus's experience. It's the experience of the early church. It's the experience of believers across the world. That challenges our modern success criteria narratives, doesn't it? But of course, we're called to be fruitful in making Jesus known. Let's engage in that today together.